Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we're going to start off with lecture number 5. We're starting off with chapter number 3. Now chapter number 3 talks about analyzing marketing environment, right? So you need to continuously see what is happening in your market environment, because it tells you the opportunities, it tells you the threats that are there. So you need to continuously scan your marketing environment. Now before we get on to this chapter number 3, let's quickly give a recap to what we have done before, right? So what did we do? We talked about partnering with other departments in the organization. So if you're working in a certain organization, you need to coordinate with the rest of the department. Why? Because each department in the organization is creating some value that would be delivered to the customer at the end of the day, right? So value creation is what? Well, value creation is what? The benefit, right? So at the end of the day, each department is creating some value that would be eventually delivered to the customer, right? So to create a superior customer value, you need to see that all the departments in the organization are well coordinated, right? So this talks about value chain. So each department in the organization is a part of value chain, right? So this is all about coordinating with different departments. So marketing has to coordinate with finance, it has to coordinate with purchase department, it has to coordinate with HR so that it can deliver superior customer value. Now customer value is also dependent on organizations that are other than your own. So that are organizations that fall under your value delivery network. So value delivery network organizations include your suppliers, your distributors, and ultimately your customers. So for proper value delivery, to ensure superior value delivery to your customer, you need to ensure that your value delivery network is well coordinated. So for instance, if the supplier cannot supply you raw material, then that means you would not be able to make the product. If you cannot make the product, then the warehousing facility would not store the product. It would not be available to the reseller. It would not be available to the retailer. So if the product is not available to the retailer, eventually it would not reach the customer. And customer would switch to the alternative product that is there in the market. So all the departments, all the agents in the value delivery network, they need to stay well coordinated in order to ensure superior value delivery. Now we talked about Toyota's example. Toyota talks about supplier satisfaction, which is the level that the companies are now taking in order to deliver superior value to the customer. Now we talked about marketing strategy and marketing mix. What was marketing strategy? Marketing strategy is the marketing logic by which business unit hopes to achieve marketing objectives, right? So we talked about that for a good marketing strategy, the customer needs to be the center point of the marketing strategy. So that essentially talks about customer driven marketing strategies. How do you make a customer driven marketing strategy? You make it based on identifying the target market and then creating a product that is according to their needs and then positioning that product in the minds of the customer. So that's how you find the right customer and then right product for that right customer. Then we talked about product, price, place, promotion, and we talked about that these 4 P's are the marketer's perspective. What's the customer's perspective? It is the 4 C's: customer solution, customer cost, convenience, and communication. And for a good customer driven marketing strategy, you need to be in the shoes of your customer and think about the 4 C's and not just 4 P's. So a good marketer always thinks about 4 C's alongside the 4 P's. Then we talked about managing the marketing effort. We said marketing effort needs to be properly managed, and for that you need to analyze the environment continuously. How would you analyze the environment? SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is what? Strength, opportunities, weaknesses and threats. So you need to strengths and weaknesses are internal in nature, and opportunities and threats are external in nature. Then coming down to marketing planning. Marketing planning is the development of strategic and marketing plans to achieve company's objective, right? So it consists of what we already talked about: target segmentation, target marketing, positioning, marketing mix. Now implementation is what? Implementation is the process whereby the plans that you've made, you put them in action, right? You implement them. You try to execute the plans that you have made in implementation. Now, talking about implementation, there are various ways in which marketing departments are organized. We discussed 4 of those ways: functional, geographic, product, and customer or market oriented. Then coming down to marketing control, we said marketing control is extremely important. One way that you can control the market or assess where do you stand as a marketer is through marketing audit. You have an external person or external body come in, evaluate your strategies and see where you're heading to. If it's the right direction, good for you. If it's not, what corrective actions can you take? This is all about marketing control. Now we talked about return on investment. Return on investment is what? How much money did you put in and what did you earn out of that money that you've invested? Now talking about marketing return on investment, now many people criticize marketing that it does not return as much as you spend on it. So marketers need to justify themselves. They need to justify that whatever money you're giving us, we're putting it in to good use, right? So that they ask for numbers in that for that. Now numbers are very hard to calculate when it comes to marketing return on investment. We talked about a few measures. We talked about customer acquisitions. How many new customers did you get? How many older customers did you retain? And what is the CLV? CLV is what? Customer lifetime value. So what value does each customer give you throughout his life? Is a measure that tells you return on investment. Now return on marketing, we eventually come down to return on we eventually come down to customer equity. What is customer equity?
Different prices at different
the sum of total giving value to the company. Anybody else? What is customer equity? What is customer equity? It is the sum of total value that all the current and future customers would give you. So it is the sum of CLV of all the customers, right? So that is customer equity. Now coming down to learning objectives of this chapter, it would help you describe the environmental forces that affect company's ability to serve its customer, and it would also explain you how the changes in demographics and economic environment affect marketing decisions. We're firstly going to see the first objective of this chapter. The first objective is the marketing environment. Now what is marketing environment? The environment of marketing? Okay. Anybody else? Now marketing environment includes actors and forces outside marketing that affect marketing management's ability to build and maintain successful relationship with the customer. So these are the outside factors that would affect a company in creating value, right? And in building superior relationships with the customer. So when we talk about marketing environment, there are two types of environment that we are essentially talking about. There's a micro environment and then there's a macro environment. What is micro environment? Micro environment consists of actors close to the company that affects its ability to serve the customer, the company, suppliers, marketing intermediaries, customer markets, competitors, and publics. So your marketing environment consists of all these actors. What actors are we talking about? The company, the supplier, the marketing intermediaries, the customers, the competitors, and the publics. Now let's come down to macro environment. What macro environment talks about? Now macro environment talks about larger societal forces. Larger societal forces are, we were talking about macro environment. Now macro environment is all about societal forces, the larger forces, the culture that is there, the technological changes, the natural, political. Now all these factors, if you see, they are not in control of the organization, right? So if you see the micro environment, the company might be able to influence the factors, or pretty much be able to influence those actors. But here if you see, a company cannot influence these factors in short run. It might be able to do it in long run, but in short run, the companies cannot influence these factors. So that is what comprises macro environment, right? So macro environment, when I say short term and long term, what do I mean? Anybody? How might a company influence a culture in long term? Advertising, okay. Anybody else? Okay. We just did the example of Nirala in the quiz, right? How has the company changed? It's because of the changing culture. The new companies like Cadbury, Nestle, they've come in, they've introduced their product, and in longer run what they've changed is changed the taste buds of the people of Pakistan. Now they're preferring chocolates, western sweets over your traditional sweets. So in the long run they've changed the culture of the land. Same goes for Coke. If you have to define America, Coke is an important element of their culture, of pop culture, what we say, popular culture, right? So a product has become a part or an essential part of the culture. It can change, it has become, incorporated there. So this is how in the longer run a company might be able to influence the macro environment. But in short run, it's not really that possible. But for micro environment, the company is able to control the actors that are there. So when we're talking about macro environment, we're talking about demographics, we're talking about economic forces, we're talking about natural resources, technological forces, political forces, cultural forces. So today we're going to see only the micro environment that is there. So micro environment is what? Suppliers. The environment that is close to the company and you would be able to control it somehow. Now coming down to the first element, the company. The company itself. The company itself is comprised of different departments. Different departments. Which departments are we talking about? Finance, R&D, management, purchasing. So the company's departments come together and they deliver a superior value. We talked about value chain just now. So for a superior value chain, you need to have departments that are well coordinated with each other, right? Coming down to the second element of the microenvironment, that are the suppliers. So suppliers include the people who provide you with raw material, right? The people who provide you with material to produce the products. So that also falls under microenvironment. The company may be able to influence their suppliers. In fact, they are the ones who are generating, who are giving profit to them, who are giving revenue to the suppliers. The company gives revenue to the suppliers, right? They buy the products from them, as a result of which the supplier makes money, right? So suppliers are a part of your microenvironment. If they fail to deliver the product, you would not be able to deliver the value that you promised to your customer. Right? Now, we talked about how suppliers must be treated as partners. Why they need to be treated as partners? Because your business depends on them. If they act out, your business would act out, right? If you need to ensure stable supply of products in the market, you need to have a good relationship with your supplier. Agar supplier back out kar jayega, you would have to choose a new supplier. That would take time, and for that time you will be losing quite a chunk of your revenue, right? And customers too, very right. So you need to ensure that you treat your supplier as a partner in the firm. Now coming down to marketing intermediaries. Now marketing intermediaries are all those bodies that help to promote the product, to sell the product, and to distribute the product to the final buyer. So somebody who would take the product from the origin to the end customer would be a marketing intermediary. So this would include resellers, physical distribution firms, marketing service agencies, and financial intermediaries. So who are resellers? Resellers are the people who would get the product from the origin, and they would find customers or make sales to the end customer. Now these include wholesalers and retailers. Wholesalers are the people who give product to the retailer, and retailer is the one who gives the product to the final customer, right? Physical distribution firms are what firms? That distribute the product, right? So who would provide the product to the retailer? The physical distribution firms, they generally tend to provide you with a warehousing facility also. So they would provide you plenty of facilities. We're talking about warehousing, talking about distribution. Now marketing service agencies include your media houses, your marketing agencies, your advertising agencies, your marketing consulting firms. So all these things fall under marketing service agencies. So company like Saatchi & Saatchi, Channel 7, these are all what? Marketing service agencies. PNG? PNG is what? Okay, that is also my, okay. PNG stands for? Procter & Gamble is not a marketing service agency, we're not talking about. Marketing service agency is an agency that would provide you with services such as marketing research, advertising, media services, right? So these firms make the product, but their advertising is generally outsourced to some other company. So for instance, Comsets outsources its advertising to Channel 7. There's another organization, but at the moment I can only think of Channel 7. So Channel 7 does advertising for Comsets. Same way, Procter & Gamble might employ an external body who would advertise for instance, Interflow does a lot of advertising for many MNCs Interflow is a huge advertising agency here in Pakistan. So it would do advertising for many of the multinationals working here in Pakistan. So Procter & Gamble is not a marketing service agency. Marketing organization, marketing service agency, these are two different terms.
And what about Facebook? It also provides advertising.
It also provides, it could fall under media firm.
Not under marketing. It is a part of market.
Market service agencies. Yes. Or anybody else? Shalina, whatever you're saying, bring it to me. Yeah? Financial intermediaries. Now, many a times you cannot buy the product on your own. For instance, you're buying a house, one cannot pay the amount upfront. 1.5 crore ka ghar hai, can you buy upfront? Many people can, many cannot. What they do? They go for loans, right? So your financial intermediaries also play a huge role when it comes to micro environment. These are all marketing intermediary. Now coming down to customers. Now customers are of different kinds. The customer might be the end customer, which is the customer markets, right? So average final buyer of the product would be customer market. Business market would be what? A product that would go further into transformation. So for instance, if I buy bread for my own house, it would be customer market, right? So if I buy bread for my own house, that is customer market. But if I own chai khana makes French toast out of that bread, that means I bought bread for business market, because it would go into further transformation. So the final good is customer market, where it would be further not put into, or would not be further sold, right? But it would be consumed. Reseller market is what? Somebody who would buy the product and then resell it to make profit. That would be reseller. Government markets are what? Government would buy the products and spend it for, or give it to others. So zalzala aaya hai, there's an earthquake, abhi nahi aaya hai. ठीक है? So there's an earthquake, government buys a lot of clothes for the people who need it, medicines for the people who need it, food items for the people who need it, and give it to them. So that is government markets. International markets of work consists of buyers in other countries, including consumer, producers, reseller, and government. So what's the difference between reseller markets and business markets? Okay, the gentleman right at the back, center mein. What's the difference between business market and reseller market? Can you speak a little louder, please? A business market is a market where the products are bought and they're further transformed, right? So if the product goes into further transformation, that is a business market. But in reseller market, the product would not be further transformed, but you would make profit out of that product. So that's the difference between business market and reseller market. Now coming down to competitors, firms must gain strategic advantage by positioning their offering against competitors' offering. So you need to continuously see what your competitor is doing in the market, right? So that you stay relevant in the market. For instance, the competitor starts offering a very superior product. It has come in the market with a very breakthrough technology that would outdate your product. You need to see that market offering. You need to understand that you might go out of business out of that innovation that your competitor has introduce. So need to ensure that you see what strategies is your marketer adopting, right? Or is your competitor adopting, so as to stay relevant. Alongside that, one important thing is that all strategies don't work for all companies, right? So a strategy that might work for you, it might not work for another company. So there's no right strategy. The right strategy is what works for you, right? So Pepsi and Coke, we did this example before as well. So Pepsi and Coke both work in the cola industry, yet they work on a very different business model, right? So Coke does not give licenses, Pepsi does, right? So they work on a very different business models, yet they're very successful companies. So the thing to learn here is that it's not a strategy that is right. It is how you execute it, how you deal with it, that would make it right. Get it? So each firm needs to consider its own size, industry position compared to those of its competitors when it's introducing or when it's strategizing for its organization. Coming down to publics. Now publics is any group that has an actual or potential interest in or impact on an organization's ability to achieve its objectives. So any group that has an actual interest or a potential interest in your organization would fall under publics. This would include many types: financial publics, media publics, government, citizen action, local publics, general publics, and internal publics, right? How do you differentiate between a public and a stakeholder? What's the difference? The definition is right in front of you. What's the difference between publics and stakeholders?
Stakeholders might have direct
They have actual interest while the public has
indirect.
potential. Stakeholders have actual interest while public has potential interest.
Okay, who is a stakeholder?
And they are part of the business, and they might be customers, suppliers.
Okay,
They might be
okay, very close. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Many stakeholders are people who are directly involved in the organization or in direct relationship, but public might have indirect.
Might have indirect relationship.
Yeah, like they might be affected by.
Your company's decision making?
global warming.
Global warming, chaliye. So if you go on the internet and try to find out what's the difference between a stakeholder and publics, many would say these terms can be used interchangeably. Many of the researchers, they disagree with this point of view. For instance, Hunt and I cannot remember the other author, in their article, this disagreed with this point of view, and they said these two terms are different terms and they should not be used interchangeably, right? So a stakeholder has a potential to be a public, right? So according to their study, the stakeholder is not as aware and as interested as a public, right? So for instance, a company decides not to give bonuses to its customers or to its employees, right? So this year around the company decides not to give bonuses, so the employees go on strike. Now this time around their awareness level and their interest level is higher. So those stakeholders, the employees are the stakeholders, right? We all agree on that? So now they have greater awareness and greater interest in the organization. Therefore the stakeholder would now be a public, right? So this is what researchers say. But for here, we'll keep it simple. We would use the term interchangeably here, right? But as a marketing student, you need to realize that these terms are two different terms. Now coming down to publics, financial publics are the publics, that affect your ability to gain funds. So funding, what are the resources of, what are the sources of funding?
Government, banks.
Two main sources of funding. Creditors and equity, very right. Right? So there are two basic sources of funding. Either you have money of your own, that is equity, or you take loan, right? You take it from the creditors. So this is what? This is financial public. So anybody who would affect your ability to get funds, they would fall under financial public. Media publics are people who influence, who sort of influence your company from media perspective. So this would include newspaper. So you run a restaurant, there's a food blogger comes in, he tries out your product, writes an article in the newspaper or magazine. That blogger would be media public. He would influence other people. He would have a say. He would, how would you call it him? How would you call him a public? Because he would have the ability to impact your potential customer, right? So somebody like me who would go read the blog, I would find out that they're not offering quality product. I might not visit the restaurant, right? So this is media public. So that it would include what? It would include magazine, newspaper, radio and television. The next one is government public. So government makes rules and regulations and it affects your or impacts your organization. The other day, government banned the Indian content, complete ban on Indian content. There would be no movies playing in the cinemas as well, right?
Yes.
So this is what? Government regulation. It would affect the cinema owners and the media houses as well. So 70% of the revenue that is generated from the cinemas comes from Indian movies, unfortunately, right? So if this ban goes on, that means the cinema owners would not be generating that 70% of revenue, which is a huge amount, right? Can they sustain it? That's the question, right? The next one is citizen action public. Now these include environment group, animal activists. So let's say you try out, you carry out your R&D and you test your products on animals. Animal right activists would speak negatively about your company, right? So they would have bad reviews for your company since you're offending their belief. They're animal right activists, they like to protect animals, right? So need to see citizen action publics as well. Then local publics include neighborhood, residents, community organizations. So these are all resident groups. So you're living in Bahria town and there's a factory that is established in the town, you know. So it would impact the residents. So you need to see the local publics as well. If you're living in, if somebody of you lives in phase 4 of Bahria town, वहाँ पे जब भी बरसात आती है ना, बहुत बुरी smell आती है. There are feed factories across the Swan River. आपसे खड़ा नहीं हुआ जाता बाहर, ठीक है? इतनी स्मेल होती है उस एरिया में. आप फेज 7 में रहते हैं? चलें जी. बकरा मंडी में रहता है. Quiet. ऊंचा बोला करो. कोई बात नहीं, लेक्चर खत्म करने दीजिए. चलें जी, we'll quickly wrap it up. So local publics include the neighborhood, right? So you need to watch your neighborhood. If you're working in a neighborhood, disturbing the neighborhood, like the example of phase 4 of Bahria town, where there are chicken feed companies across Swan River, and there's such a pathetic smell that you cannot stand outside Now this is something that the company needs to see and work on, right? General public is what? They influence company's overall image, and your internal public would include your employees, workers, volunteers, directors. So your people working within the organization would fall under internal public. With this, we've come to the end of lecture number 7. If there's a question, we'll take it in the next minute or so.